welcome to the deep dive. Ready to boost those English listening skills?
Sounds good to me.
All right. We're taking a deep dive into 15 awesome tips from a recent podcast, all about making English listening less of a chore and more, well, fun.
I love that because it really shouldn't feel like pulling teeth, right?
Absolutely. And they actually suggest diving headfirst into English movies and TV shows, even stuff you've already seen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Start with subtitles in your native language, then switch to English subs, and finally, go subtitle free.
Whoa, that's hardcore. But wait, does that actually work?
I'm curious about that too. I mean, is it really that effective?
Well, think about it. It's kind of like how kids learn, you know? Constant exposure, picking up patterns and words naturally. The subtitles are like training wheels.
Oh, like a little support system until your brain's ready to go solo.
Exactly. And the podcast specifically mentioned sitcoms like Friends. Great for clear dialogue.
Oh, totally. That reminds me, I picked up this phrase, chuffed to bits, from watching a British show once.
Haha, that's perfect. See, it works. And that just shows how those cultural references, the slang, the accents, they all add to the fun.
For sure. It's like adding all those spices to your language, you know. And speaking of variety, podcasts seem like the perfect way to learn on the go.
Oh, absolutely. Podcasts are amazing. And there are so many out there, from storytelling to self-improvement, anything you can imagine.
And they even recommend a specific one, The English We Speak, by the BBC.
Ah, classic. The BBC always comes through. And what I love about podcasts is it really forces you to listen actively, no zoning out allowed.
True. You got to be present. So it's not just about letting the words wash over you.
Nope. It's about pausing, repeating, maybe even taking notes, really digesting that information.
Makes sense, like highlighting key points in a textbook.
Exactly. And then, to test your comprehension, you can try summarizing what you've just heard. See if you actually got it.
Okay, so we've got movies, TV shows, podcasts. What about music? Can belting out your favorite tunes really improve your English?
Oh, absolutely. Music's super powerful, right? It gets those emotions flowing, helps us remember things better.
Okay, so more than just a fun pastime.
Definitely. When you're singing along, you're practicing pronunciation without even realizing it. Picking up the rhythm, the intonation, all of that good stuff.
And the podcast suggests artists like Adele or Ed Sheeran.
Great choices. Their music's catchy, and the lyrics are pretty clear, perfect for learners. And hey, if you get stuck on a word, you can always look up the lyrics online.
Right. Websites like Genius are lifesavers for that. Okay, so music's in the mix. And then, of course, there's the giant world of YouTube.
Oh, YouTube's a goldmine, isn't it? Endless possibilities.
Seriously. Educational channels, stuff related to your hobbies, you name it.
And the cool thing is you can adjust the playback speed. Slow things down if you need to.
Oh, that's handy. So it's super accessible. What about audiobooks? I've always found those kind of intimidating, especially as a beginner.
I get it. They can be a bit much at first. Start with something familiar, maybe a book you've already read in your native language.
Oh, like The Little Prince, or even Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly. Once you feel comfy with those, you can level up to more challenging stuff.
All right, so it's like a step-by-step approach.
Yeah.
Now, what about language learning apps? They often get lumped in with entertainment, but are they actually helpful?
Yeah, they totally can be. Apps like Duolingo or Babbel are great for building that foundation, you know, grammar, vocab, all that jazz.
Right. So it's more structured learning.
Yep. They've got interactive exercises, listening drills, all designed to help you hone those specific skills.
And you can squeeze them in anytime, right?
Exactly. During your commute, waiting for a friend, whatever. It's like having a mini English lesson in your pocket.
Perfect for the modern learner.
Yeah.
Now, the podcast also recommends checking out websites like BBC Learning English. Why those specifically?
Well, these sites offer a ton of structured listening exercises. They've got different levels, too, from beginner to super advanced.
Oh, that's great. So there's something for everyone.
Exactly. Plus, they often have comprehension questions, transcripts, explanations of grammar points, all that good stuff.
So it's a more analytical approach, really breaking things down.
Exactly. Perfect for those who like to dig a little deeper. So far, we've been talking about active learning, but the podcast also mentions this thing called passive listening. Is that really a thing?
Honestly, that sounds kind of counterintuitive. How can you learn without actually paying attention?
Well, it's not like you're sleeping through a lecture.
Yeah.
More like having English playing in the background as you do other things.
Oh, okay. So like while I'm cooking dinner or something.
Exactly. Maybe put on a podcast you've already listened to actively. It's like reinforcing what you've learned without any extra effort.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
I like it. It's like maximizing your time even when you're not studying.
Exactly. Making English a part of your environment, Now, one technique they mentioned that sounds pretty intense is shadowing.
Yeah, that one caught my attention too. What's the deal with that?
Well, imagine you're trying to become a vocal clone of a native speaker. You listen to a clip, like a TED Talk or something, and then try to repeat it word for word, mimicking their every sound.
Whoa. Sounds challenging, but also kind of cool. What's the point of that, though?
It's all about training your ears and your mouth to work together.
Yeah.
You're picking up on the tiny details of their speech, the intonation, the connected sounds.
So it's like fine-tuning your pronunciation, right?
Exactly. And the more you do it, the more natural your own English will sound. And speaking of pronunciation, the podcast stresses the importance of listening to a variety of accents.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Wouldn't that just confuse a learner?
It might seem that way, but think about it. The world is full of different accents. You want to be able to understand everyone, right?
True.
So exposing yourself to, say, American, British, Australian accents, it's like training your ear to recognize different instruments in an orchestra.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. So you're basically expanding your listening range.
Exactly. And culturally, it opens you up to different ways of expressing yourself.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. But with all these amazing tips, it's easy to get overwhelmed. I know the podcast talks about setting goals. Why is that so important?
Well, think about it. If you just aimlessly wander around, you're not going to get very far.
Right, you need a destination.
Exactly. Goals give you that direction. It's like having a roadmap for your learning journey. So instead of just saying, I want to improve my English, you set specific targets.
Oh, like I want to understand 80% of a podcast without subtitles, or I want to learn 10 new words every week.
That's it. Making those aspirations concrete and actionable.
Right, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, how about actually practicing those conversational skills? The podcast mentions online language exchanges. What's that all about?
Oh, it's super cool. Imagine connecting with a native English speaker who's learning your language.
So it's like a language swap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You both help each other out. There are platforms like Tandem or HelloTalk that make it easy to find a partner.
Wow. So you get real-time practice. That's awesome. One last tip that caught me off guard was the idea of re-watching or re-listening to stuff you've already enjoyed. Isn't that a bit repetitive?
It might seem that way, but think of it like watching your favorite movie for the 10th time. You always pick up on something new, right?
Oh, yeah. You notice those little details you missed before.
Exactly. Same with English content. When you revisit it, you can focus on the language itself, the expressions they use, the humor.
So you're not just following the plot anymore, you're actually analyzing the language.
Exactly. And since you already know the story, you can relax and really absorb those nuances.
All right, that makes sense. It's like taking your understanding to a whole new level.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, remember, consistency is key.
Oh, for sure. But consistency can be tough. Life gets in the way,
I hear you. The trick is to make it a habit, not a chore.
Easier said than done, right?
I know. But trust me, even 10-15 minutes a day can make a huge difference. Just find those little pockets of time.
Oh, like during my commute or while I'm waiting in line?
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to stick to the same thing every day. Mix it up. Podcasts, music, YouTube, whatever floats your boat.
All right, variety is the spice of life.
Yeah.
It's all about keeping things fun and engaging.
Exactly. And that's what makes the difference between a fleeting attempt and real, lasting progress.
I love that. It's a journey, not a sprint.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Welcome back to the deep dive. Ready to level up those listening skills.
Definitely. Last time we were talking about making English a part of our daily lives, building that consistency.
Exactly. So let's say you've been doing all that. You're watching movies, listening to podcasts, maybe even dabbling in some language app.
Right, building that solid foundation.
Exactly. But now it's time to fine-tune those skills, Get a bit more advanced.
Okay, I like where this is going. So what's next? What are some of those power moves we can try?
Well, remember shadowing? We touched on that earlier.
Oh, yeah. Mimicking a native speaker, like a vocal clone. It sounded pretty intense.
It is. But it's also incredibly effective. Think about it. When you're shadowing, you're forced to pay attention to every single detail of their speech.
Okay, more than just parroting the words.
Way more. It's about the pronunciation, the intonation, even those tiny pauses and breaths.
Wow, so you're really dissecting their delivery.
Exactly. And as you practice, you start to internalize those subtle elements. It's like you're absorbing the music of the language, not just the words.
I see. So it's about training your ear to recognize those patterns, that flow.
Exactly. And that leads to more natural, fluent English.
Okay, I'm getting it. But honestly, shadowing still seems a bit daunting. Any tips for a newbie?
Sure. Start small. Pick a short audio clip, like a minute or two, maybe a TED Talk excerpt or a scene from your favorite show, something you can listen to over and over again.
Okay, manageable chunks.
Exactly. And don't worry about being perfect at first. Just focus on mimicking the rhythm, the intonation.
Gotcha. So don't get hung up on every single word.
Right. As you get more comfortable, you can gradually increase the difficulty.
Cool. So once you're feeling good with shadowing individual speakers, what's next?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. Try branching out to different accents.
Oh, right. We talked about that before. Exposing yourself to the beautiful diversity of English.
Exactly. But I'm curious, does the idea of tackling different accents seem a bit overwhelming? I mean, wouldn't that make things even more confusing?
It does kind of feel like adding another layer of complexity. How do you even approach that without getting lost in a sea of sounds?
I get it. But think of it this way. Each accent is like a different flavor of English, with its own unique pronunciation, sometimes even different words.
Okay, so it's like exploring different regions of a country, each with its own distinct dialect.
Exactly. And by immersing yourself in those different accents, you're essentially expanding your understanding of the language as a whole.
So it's not about mastering each accent perfectly, but more about training your ear to recognize and adapt.
Precisely. You're building that flexibility, that adaptability.
So how do you even start? Do we just randomly listen to different accents?
Not exactly. Try a more systematic approach. Pick one accent, maybe British English or Australian English, and really focus on that for a week or two.
Oh, so it's like a deep dive into a specific accent.
Exactly. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, really immerse yourself in that sound. Then you can switch to another one.
Okay, so it's like adding new tools to your listening toolkit, one accent at a time.
Precisely. And before you know it, you'll be switching between accents effortlessly.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've tackled shadowing, we're getting comfortable with different accents. What about fast speech? That's always a struggle for me.
Right, yes, the dreaded fast speech. Don't worry, it's a common challenge. And it takes time. You can't expect to understand everything at lightning speed right away.
Patience.
Exactly. But here's a cool trick. Work with transcripts.
Transcripts?
Yeah.
Like the written version of an audio or video?
Yep, find a clip you like, maybe a news segment or something, and get the transcript. Many websites offer those.
Okay, so it's like having subtitles for your learning material.
Exactly. Listen to the audio without the transcript first, try to get the gist of it. Then, listen again, this time following along with the transcript.
So you're matching the sounds to the written words.
Exactly. You'll start to see those patterns in how native speakers connect words, how they sometimes drop sounds or change pronunciation depending on the context.
It's like decoding the secret language of fast speech.
That's a great way to put it. And another technique that can be really helpful is called chunking.
Chunking? What's that?
Well, instead of trying to process an entire sentence at once, break it down into smaller chunks. Phrases, clauses, even just groups of 2 or 3 words.
Oh, so instead of getting overwhelmed by a wall of words, you're breaking it down into manageable bites.
Precisely. It makes it easier to process the information and actually remember what you've heard.
I see. It's like giving your brain a little breathing room.
Exactly. Now, one last thing I want to emphasize, and this applies to all aspects of listening, is the importance of training your attention.
Attention training. It sounds kind of like meditation.
Haha, it does. Think about it. When you're listening to English, especially in real-life situations, there are always distractions. Background noise, other conversations, even your own thoughts.
Oh, totally. It's like trying to listen to a podcast in a crowded coffee shop.
Exactly. So you need to train your brain to focus on the target audio and tune out the rest.
Okay, so how do you actually do that?
There are exercises you can try. One is called dichotic listening. It's where you listen to 2 different audio streams, one in each ear.
Whoa, that sounds trippy. Like a brain workout.
It is, and it forces your brain to work hard to pick out the relevant information.
I see. So it's like building those mental muscles for focus and filtering.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the better you'll get at filtering out those distractions and really honing in on what you want to hear.
Makes sense. So we've talked about shadowing, accents, fast speech, and now attention training. Is there anything else we should add to our listening arsenal?
Well, there's one last technique that's often overlooked, but it's super powerful. Paraphrasing.
Paraphrasing. You mean putting what you've heard into your own words.
Exactly. It might seem simple, but it forces you to actively process the information.
Right, so instead of just passively listening, you're really engaging with the meaning.
Precisely. If you can't paraphrase it, you probably didn't fully understand it. It's a great way to check your comprehension in real time.
Oh, that's a good point. It's like testing yourself to see if you really got it.
Exactly. And paraphrasing also helps with memory. When you put something into your own words, you create a stronger connection to the material.
So it sticks with you better.
Yep. Plus, it helps develop your fluency. The more you practice expressing ideas in your own way, the more natural your speaking will become.
Wow, so paraphrasing is like a multi-purpose tool. It benefits both your listening and speaking skills.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Awesome. We've covered so much in this part of our deep dive. It feels like we've unlocked a whole new level of listening.
I'm glad to hear that. But before we move on, I just want to emphasize something really important. While these techniques are great, they work best when combined with consistency and, well, a genuine love for the language.
Right. You got to enjoy the process.
Absolutely. Don't get so bogged down in the technical stuff that you forget why you started learning English in the first place.
It's about finding that balance between focused practice and pure enjoyment.
Exactly.
All right, welcome back to Deep Dive. We've covered so much ground already, from diving into movies and music to shadowing native speakers like pros.
It's been quite the journey.
It has. But now comes the really exciting part, putting it all into practice, right?
Yeah.
Making it, well, a part of our lives.
Exactly. Because knowing the techniques is great, but actually using them, that's where the magic happens.
Totally. Okay, so where do we start? I mean, a lot of people struggle with, finding the time. Life gets pretty hectic.
Oh, I hear you. It's a common struggle for sure. But the thing is, you don't need huge chunks of time.
Well, that's good to hear. Because honestly, who has those?
Right. So instead, focus on those little pockets of time you have throughout the day. Think about it. You're commuting, maybe doing chores, maybe just waiting in line in store.
Oh yeah, those moments kind of just disappear, don't they?
Exactly. But they're perfect for sneaking in some English practice. Instead of mindlessly scrolling through your phone, pop in your earbuds and listen to a podcast.
Or an audiobook.
Yes. Or even a YouTube video, whatever you're into.
So it's like turning those dead moments into learning opportunities.
Exactly. And the best part is, it doesn't feel like work. You're just enjoying something you like, but in English.
I love that. It's sneaky learning.
Haha, exactly. And those minutes really add up over time. And here's another tip. Try keeping track of your progress. Write down new words you learn, maybe how many hours you've listened.
Oh, like a little English journal. I like that. It's visual, so you can actually see how far you've come.
Exactly. It's super motivating. And it helps you, spot any patterns, like maybe realize you always struggle with a certain accent.
Oh, that's a good point. Then you can focus your practice on that.
Precisely. It's all about taking control of your learning, making it work for you. Now, something we've mentioned before, variety is key.
Absolutely. Keeps things interesting.
Exactly. Don't just listen to the same podcast every day. One day it's an audiobook, next day it's a TV show, mix it up.
Ooh, a buffet of English content.
Exactly. It's about keeping your brain engaged and having fun while you're at it. And speaking of engagement, remember that active listening we talked about?
Yeah, but that was more for podcasts, right?
You can apply it to anything, even movies or TV shows. So instead of just passively watching, try to interact with the language. Pause it, repeat phrases out loud, write down new words.
Oh, I see. So you're like having a conversation with the content.
Exactly. You're not just absorbing, you're actively processing it.
And that helps you remember it better, right?
Absolutely. And once you get comfortable with that, you can even start to analyze the language more closely. Pay attention to the idioms, the slang, how they use humor.
It's like becoming a language detective.
Exactly. It's a whole new level of appreciation for the language. But remember, even with all these amazing techniques, it's important to remember that it's a journey.
Oh yeah, could have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of English listening. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.